us through this wrath. And it is what we could call abandonment wrath, where God turns us over to our own ways. You have rejected me, God says. You're on your own. And God turns us over to go our own way. And from that point, you can't get back to God unless God, in some extraordinary measure of mercy, brings you back. Now, that is found here in Romans 1, verse 24, verse 26, and in verse 28. This present wrath of God. Verse 24, therefore God gave them over in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. Verse 26, for this reason God gave them over to degrading passions. Their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. It's lesbianism. Verse 27, in the same way, also the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, homosexuality. And then in verse 28, just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer. See, the issue is God. The issue is always God. You tell me what you do with God, and I'll tell you how you're going to live and where you're going to end up. They did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer. God gave them over. It's the third time he says that, and it's like the slippery slope. It's like a descending down rungs on a ladder, deeper and deeper into sin. It starts out with just immorality, and then it comes down to the grossest of all immoralities, lesbianism and homosexuality, but it doesn't end there. There's a basement even deeper below that. And in verse 28, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things that are not proper. And in verses 29 to 31, he spells that out. And this verse 28, this depraved mind, this reprobate mind, it can no longer function. It can no longer differentiate right and wrong. It can't think its way from point A to point B. And I'm going to have to say this is exactly where a major portion of America is. Now you make the most insane decisions. And you go, how in the world could you possibly have come up with that decision? Well, it's right here. So, the present wrath is abandonment wrath. And God just turning a people over to go their own way. And when God gives you over, you can't get there from here. You keep making decisions that take you further away and further away and further away from God. So the wrath of God is revealed. Not just future wrath, which is coming. And there are those in hell right now who are experiencing this eternal wrath. But this present wrath of abandonment by God. It's the scariest thing that can ever happen to a culture, or to a society, or to a denomination, or to a seminary, or to a ministry, or to a movement, is when they reject God. They reject the virgin birth. They reject the substitutionary death of Christ. They reject the inspiration of the Scripture. They reject the bodily resurrection. They reject eternal hell. Fine. Then I'll give you homosexual ministers. Then I'll give you homosexual this and that. But it'll get worse. And you will make a series of decisions that will take you further and further and further and further away from God. And the whole time you think you're doing just great with God. You're like a dead fish floating downstream and don't even know that you're dead. Now, there's one more thing I want to show you here.